Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome back to the Ulgonsah Witches. I hope you like the way things have changed on the channel. I know the old stuff is being removed, but you know, we got to move on and work on new things. Chapter 6. It's called The Long Sunday. Here we go. The Angel Queen. By standing order of Hannah, each Sunday she was to be left alone with her thoughts as much as duty was kind enough to allow. This almost always meant that she would spend hours by the graveside of her deceased husband and king, whose tomb rested on a large shelf high above Webben. It was secluded, well groomed with grasses, shrubbery, and had more sunshine than the rest of the city. It was only about 30 feet on each bordering side, but it was peaceful and elegant for a place of honor and respect for the deceased king. Though she was asleep, the personal guard of Hannah brought her to the tomb out of honor and respect for both the living queen and the silently resting former sovereign. Hannah was carried on an elegant cart surrounded by her 4 maids. When they had finally attained the height of King Malcolm Trodair's resting place, past a mild trek of switchbacks and narrow walkways, Hannah's cart was set with a slight elevation so that her sleeping eyes could face the monument to her fallen love. Part of magic that only those who were fortunate enough to see performed by those who could conjure was the occasional, small and simple miracles that followed. Soon after Hannah had been set at the gravesite of her husband, another type of magic befell those who were there. This magic was the type that had never needed the mage star or wizards of any sort. Emotional magic was often the most powerful and moving. Kingdoms rose and fell, rivers moved, and great forests bent to it in every generation. But that simple mage-inspired miracle combined with the common magic on this day. To see Hannah open her eyes after only 2 days was one such common miracle. She woke to the closeness of her lifelong love. Those who saw their queen were struck by her little smile, her tear-filled eyes, and the motion of her right hand. With a slight little wave of her fingers, a single lilac flower grew and bloomed to touch the base of the king's monolith that marked the tomb. Both types of magic shone on the small cliffside ledge. Love and magic combined to be expressed by the waking of the old queen and bringing forth a fragrant blossom to mark the land where life and death reached beyond the veils. In a whisper, Hannah spoke to her nearest maid. "I must apologize for my weakness. I feel sleep coming back quickly and I will soon be unable to cleanse myself. But I should have some water, please." It was her humility that was one of the more enduring qualities that brought a devotion unknown to any other sovereign in history. Her people loved her, and though she was unable to prevent soiling herself, and though she was unable to even hold her cup to drink, her maids and people felt it a privilege of eons to be blessed enough to serve this angel queen. After a full cup was struggled with and eventually consumed, Hannah returned to the deep sleep of mages. Braid Ulgonsah. Sunday morning, on the second day of their march towards Webben, was not like the day before and nothing like Braid had hoped. Those that remained of Ebbenburg were mostly too old or too wounded to march more than 3 miles a day. Even those 3 miles were a struggle for a good portion. Yesterday, there had been several of their most old who had passed away with weak hearts that could no longer keep the blood flowing. Their deaths were almost merciful, having ended the hardship of the long march, being a refugee, and having to survive a winter that was coming with few preparations in store. There were also a few of the middle-aged and younger who died from wounds of battle, torture, and rape. Those were the hardest to see lose their fight. After surviving the struggle with Dundriff raiders, only to die days later seemed an insult of the most dreadful kind to Braid. It was also another cloudy day with the chill of wind that promised rain in the approaching clouds. This day was not one to march in, only to find more misery at an end of another 2 or 3 miles. Therefore Braid and her detachment of men made camp linger for another day. Half of the able-bodied went out to hunt for food, while those who remained and were capable gathered water, cooked what was available, and cared for most of the needy. Near noon, and with a cup of vegetable broth, Braid sat alone to rest for a moment before duty would call to her again. A curious thing happened while she sat. Holding her rapidly cooling broth, the iron cup felt warmer. The feeling intensified until it was almost too hot to hold on to. At just that point, when she was about to set the cup down, an older man sat on the other end of the boulder that Braid was using for a bench. Warm stew is more to my liking than that tepid broth. I think the poor townsfolk would agree, said the old man, with a kind look in his eyes. Braid looked into her cup to see vegetable and chicken inside. Steam was flowing off the top, showing that she had not been feeling anything but real heat and nothing that her imagination had conjured up. Braid realized quickly that she was in danger. The man sitting next to her was Plodo, the killer of her grandfather king. She was at his mercy. Unless she could act quicker than the mage's thoughts, there was nothing that she could do against him. Her best chance of dealing with this killer was to be patient and catch him while he was unaware. Plodo, I would have thought that you would be in hiding, not poisoning me with a cup full of tasty death. Braid was remarkably calm as she spoke. Poison? You should know that would be pointless. Any mage could just stop your heart or cause the earth to swallow you up. If I was a killer, I could have just put the sleep of eternity on you. A cup of hot stew is an act of kindness, nothing more. Plodo spoke with a melodic and slightly hypnotic rhythm. His voice was calming, disarming, and enchanting. His old age had none of the crackling and weakened pitch that nearly all of those of his age started to suffer from. Is that what it is that you did to my grandfather, the greatest king to have lived, and you killed him with your mage acts of kindness? I find your words to be more poison than what could have been done to my broth. From what I was led to believe, he loved his wealth more than the people. Where did all that gold go to that he had built up for himself in Webben? I understand that the palace is filled with it still. I cannot see a great king being more concerned over wealth than the security of his people. Plodo smiled at Braid. It was an insulting smile to Braid, and pained her with a dagger of anger. The palace was filled with gold because of your curse. It was all quietly spent to feed, clothe, and protect the people of Ag. Or did you think that Knowles protected Ag's eastern borders out of the goodness of his heart? Every ounce of wealth that my grandfather had was given to others to protect the people. Only lies tell otherwise. The stories of his greed were aspersions that his enemies sowed in the minds of foreigners and vagabonds. Plodo's smile changed slightly, but remained just enough to continue to be an insult to Braid. Through his grin, he spoke again. It is as I thought. Braid raised her voice in anger. It wasn't loud enough to carry far, but enough for Plodo to gain an understanding of how deeply Braid was insulted. As you thought? You knew my grandfather was a good man, and yet you cursed him anyway. What a monster you are. Either kill me or be gone. I will have no more words with you, pig. I will leave as you command. Just know this before I go. Not everything is as it should be, and not everyone is who you think they are. Include yourself in that. Many lies are in the wind, and it is on a dreadful approach. Pluto then blinked away. In a flash of silent magic, Braid was instantly alone again with her thoughts and a cup of hearty and delicious chicken stew. A sound was then heard coming from the minders of the cookpots. My sovereign, my sovereign! The broth. It's turned to chicken. Braid begged the cooks to hold the distribution of the magical concoction until it was tested for poison. Braid drained her cup and had one from the cauldrons that hung over the fires. In minutes she felt warm, full, and stronger. After a moment more, she gave order with hesitation and a bit of worried apprehension. Refill everyone's cup. Start with the weakest. The rest of the day, and through all of her duties, Braid watched with a trouble and fear that she had just aided in the poisoning of the refugees. The hours passed, long and torturous, but nothing happened to cause despair to any. The cauldrons remained warm and full. All of the refugees were a bit stronger and a bit more cheerful. For some bewildering and troubling reason, Pluto had done something kind. This was almost as painful to Braid as if she had been poisoned in reality. End of chapter 6.